just need to be African Americans, not people that are not. Because let me tell you, no, it happens all the time. It's true. I mean, I think non-African Americans think African Americans all look the same.
Well, did she just say what I think she said? Well, that was Congresswoman Tlaib insisting that Detroit police only hire African Americans for doing what's called facial recognition analysis because white people are so racist they can't tell anyone apart. Well, that didn't sit well with Detroit's police chief, who said this.
We were appalled when she made the statement. There's a double standard. If I had made the exact same comment, they would have been calling for my resignation, and she would have been leading that charge. That's a fact.
Joining me now is Candace Owens, a founder of the Blexit movement and author of Blackout, and Monique Presley, Democrat strategist and attorney. All right, Monique, defend what Tlaib said there.
Well, there are stats that defend the basis for her information. So there's information that shows where facial recognition technology is concerned that people who are of the same racial demographic as those that they are being able to identify or are supposed to be hired to identify have an easier time distinguishing between person and person. So that means that what she's saying and what she said actually later was, no, I'm not saying that no white people should be involved in doing this job in this crime lab. I'm concerned that this is a city where there's 80% people who are African American, and in here there's 95% people who are Caucasian doing the recognition. So it's just a matter of data.
So it's the proportionality.
No, it's the issue of the data. If the data says that one person can do something with more accuracy than another, then especially where identification is concerned for crime, when you're using
If it was said the other way
cameras,
around, don't talk over me. If it was said the other way around, Candace, a white person saying something even remotely akin to this, even if there were stats about certain type of behavior, or good behavior or bad behavior, you would be decried as racially stereotyping and using race as a basis for decision making, which is, I thought, what we were trying to get away from as a country. That's, to me, the double standard that is appalling here.
I mean, there's no question that what she said was racist. I'm going to take an optimistic take on this by saying that to hear that police officer speak out and call it racist is largely due to the fact that there is an awakening happening in the black community, and we are realizing that the real racists are Democrats. So I think that that's a positive spin on that. I mean, you're absolutely right. If any person said something based on statistics, if somebody said we should only police in black neighborhoods because they commit the majority of the crimes, which by statistics would be accurate. Black Americans account for 13% of the population but commit over 50% of all the homicides in this nation. That fact would be called racist. If we say we should only have black police officers because we don't want white police officers getting killed when they're committing more of the homicides, that fact would be considered racist. Her comment was racist. Her comment was inexcusable. And I'm really happy that black Americans are speaking out and saying, I do not care if the shoe is on the other foot. Racism is racism.
Well, the black police officer himself said he'd be fired if he said something akin to that, which I thought that was wow. I mean,
but he didn't say that she was racist. What he said was, if I had said that, then I would be in trouble, meaning he can't speak the truth without getting in trouble. And this congresswoman could. So when we have stats, when we have data.
So are you saying we should determine racial composition by using, well, when it's the Monique show, you can interrupt.
It's coming.
Okay, good. So seriously, I'm asking a serious question. If stats alone determine racial classifications, I think would be going into not a great place for a lot of different people of all different backgrounds. Stats alone determining racial classifications. Wow.
No, it's not stats alone, but that's why I laid out the 1, 2, 3 of it. We have stats and data that say something. We have people in the crime lab that make up more of the proportion than they should.
Okay, we made that point. All right, let's get to this recent race hoax in Virginia. Now, this is not only tragic, it's an example of how the left's narrative is poisoning the minds of our kids. Now, what happened in this case is a 12-year-old black girl claimed that 3 white boys pinned her to the ground, cut her dreadlocks with scissors. The girl's family admitted it wasn't true. They issued a heartfelt apology. To be clear, I do not blame the children. This is a child. I do take issue with adults who tried to use this hoax to push their agenda right off the bat with no investigation like the NAACP tried to do. Now, first they tried to cover up the hoax, claiming the family reached a private resolution with the school. Next, the group said in a statement that, regrettably, the assault turned out to be false. Regrettably? Why is that regrettable? Well, we should be happy she wasn't assaulted. Candace, why would the NAACP try to kind of skate past this hoax, or, as some would say, even cover it up?
Well, the NAACP is an organization that funds off of hate and race, right? So that hurts their pockets when they can't find something that they can fundraise off of. And it's embarrassing for them. It's embarrassing for them because it's revealing an ugly truth, which is that victimhood has been sold as a virtue in our community. My heart genuinely goes out to this girl. She is watching all of her idols. She is watching a media narrative that is being spun that is telling Black Americans that what they should aspire to is victimhood. And that is what needs to be reversed, and that's what needs to be talked about. And that is not a narrative that the NAACP ever wants to be talked about, because there would be no need for them to exist.
Victimology is something we've talked about a lot on this show, and whether it's a white person claiming that, you know, he's a victim, or a Black, but in this case, there does seem to be this narrative that's forwarded a lot on college campuses, and even younger now, because kids who are younger. And most kids aren't even paying attention to skin color. They're just like beyond that. Like my kids are. They don't care about that. But what about this, Monique? What does this tell us about the reaction that people want to believe it's true? It seems to be on the left. They want to believe it's true, and they're disappointed when it's not true.
Right. And what Ms. Owens just said is the most absurd and sad thing I think I've heard since I've been appearing on this show with her or anyone else. After all the times that young Black girls have gone missing, have been prostituted, have been entered into slave trafficking, and no one cared. Not when they were in Africa, not when they were in the United States. This one time when this young girl said something happened to her, and everybody jumped to her defense and believed her, I'm glad they jumped to her defense. I'm glad they believed her. I'm sorry for whatever she went through that led her to the point where she said something that was not true.
What if 3 boys were actually named? What about them?
I am sorry that she said something that was not true.
What about the 3 boys?
And
what did I say
what if the 3 boys were named?
Like I just
what about
said,
their lives?
I'm sorry she said something that wasn't true. I'm sorry that those 3 boys were accused, and they were accused and had done nothing wrong. What I'm not sorry about is that she was believed. Are we really now going to be in this place? Oh, don't believe the victims if they're Black girls?
It feels like
is
such acting. That's not what I said.
No, I'm not.
See, this is when it's bad acting. This is literally like bad acting. You should try this in
I was a Black girl.
What I specifically. Oh, you were a Black girl. I've never done that before. I've never done that before.
Obviously not.
Okay, this is bad acting, and you're trying to pretend I said anything that's against. What I said is I genuinely feel bad for this girl because she is a part of a culture of literally what you just did, pretending to be a victim like something happened on this show that you were so outraged about. That's what we need less of. Let's have real conversations.
All right, guys. All right, Candace, Monique, out of time. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.